I'm Takoda Madrona, and this is how to make a can. A can is called a can because when you take a large section of tubing and you cut it down to be a smaller section, it resembles a soda can. Now you can have a clear one or you can have a colored one, but a can is a section of tubing connected to a blow tube. I'm going to show you how to connect a section of tubing to a blow tube. First, I'm going to start with a 26mm by 4mm tube. The first version I'm going to do is I'm going to connect a punty to my tube, and then I'm going to cut open the other side and then add a blow tube to that open side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up my tube. I'm going to make sure that one, the tube is closed. So I've got a closed section of tubing where I already have a closed section of tubing here. And then the second thing I'm going to do is just make sure that it's all round and a good thickness of glass, at least a couple millimeters. Now that I've melted down the front of that tube, I've got a solid amount of glass that I can attach to. I'm going to take my punty here, I'm going to heat them both up and connect the punty to my tube. Now I'll take it out of the flame and I'll keep spinning, making sure that that feels straight. It feels like one straight rod as I spin, keeping everything nice and straight. Now I'm going to drop down into the flame and cut this tube in half. I'm going to cut myself about a 3-inch can here. So about 3 inches there. I'm going to leave the flame on my tube, and you can go real slow here, spin real slow, and let the tube get hot. I'm going to keep spinning in one place, letting the tube get nice and hot. And then once it's malleable, I can start pulling away a little bit. And now we'll make my glass peanut. That's what I like to call it, peanut. It makes a little peanut shape there. And I'm going to pull away my tube, and that will disconnect where I was heating. Once that's disconnected, you're going to have a section of tubing that is completely closed. You cannot leave glass completely closed. It has to have a hole. So now I keep the front nice and hot, and I'm going to poke it or twist my punty on the end, grabbing that glass, and I'm going to take away some of the glass on the end here. So I'm going to roll my punty at a slight angle, rolling it on the end here, and grab that glass, thinning it out. And I'm going to do this inside the flame, and that's going to thin out the glass really thin. And the pressure and power of the flame and the thin glass will eventually pop open, and it will leave me a hole. You can do this by poking into the front of your piece. Let me close this again. So now it's all closed. And instead of rolling, I'm going to poke, and this guy will pop open eventually. Now the roll is easier to take away more glass. I'm going to wrap it around the end of that piece of punty. But eventually you're going to pop open that can. And now you've got a can, but it's connected to a punty rather than a blow tube. So now I'm going to take I take my blow tube and I'm going to ream my blow tube. My blow tube is a nice cylinder. I'm going to take my reamer here and I'm going to open that cylinder up a little like a bell. We're going to heat up just the tip of our blow tube, and we're going to insert our reamer and angle the reamer as we spin, and that will open up the blow tube like a bell. So now that we've got a opened up blow tube, this opened up blow tube is going to work better for us because it will take less time for it to close up on us when in the flame. So when you put the tube into the flame, it likes to get nice and hot and close up the hole. But if it's reamed up, it won't close as quick. It also helps you gather up that glass and get a nice thick connection. You can also ream it to make it the right size hole. So the hole on my can is a little bit bigger than my blow tube. So when I reamed it open, made them the same size. And that's what you want. So now I want to connect my blow tube and my can together. So I have to get both of them really hot in the flame, but just the edges. Notice I'm going to drop the bigger, thicker one in the flame first. I'm going to angle a little bit forward. As you can see, my punty, the tip of the back end of my punty is going to go forward, angling the front of my can towards the flame, almost as if I'm going to shoot inside the can. What that's doing is angling the flame to hit the edge of my glass. I want the edge of my glass to light up. That way, when that's lit up, just the edge is going to get molten hot. So I want the edge to get molten hot. Same thing with my blow tube. If I angle backward and I have this angled back, the flame is not hitting the edge of the glass. The flame is hitting the back end of the tube, and the flame is brushing around the front. So the edge of the glass won't get that hot. Everything's going to get hot in that front area. So I want to angle myself so I hit just the edge of the glass. And I'm going to heat the big, thick one first because that's going to take longer to get hot. And then I'm going to drop in the smaller one, my blow tube. And you notice I don't have to have them right next to each other. I might bump into them. I might bump them into each other. I separate them a little bit in the flame so I don't accidentally bump into them. But then when it's time to connect, I get them real close, get them hot, make sure they're molten, the temperatures match, and I touch. I touch them together. And then I come out of the flame, and I try not to push, I try not to pull. But I want to give it a little puff. You can use a blow hose, or you can bring it to your mouth, just like I just did. So you can heat this guy, you'll get them connected. Once they're connected, you can bring it to your mouth while spinning, like so. Or you can connect a blow hose to your blow tube. But you want to get that nice and hot, get a nice connection, and get even wall thickness there in your connection. You don't want to push too much, otherwise you will create what I call a patty, or it looks like a burger, or you've got a big ring of glass in there all squished up. You don't want that. Or you don't want to pull too much. That will create more of a peanut shape. You don't want that tube to get smaller. You want it to retain the size of the original blow tube. So we keep our hands together, let her get hot, connect, and then give her a little puff to retain wall thickness. And then make sure it's nice and straight. If it's not straight, warm up your connection a little bit, take her out of the flame, and just keep spinning till it feels comfortably straight. And there we go. And now we have a can. I'm going to come down, I'm going to cut off my punty. So I do a flame cut here, and I'm leaving the flame right where the punty is connected. I leave it, I keep spinning, and then I'm going to pull away slowly and let her detach in the flame. And there we go. Now you have a can. And this can be turned into anything. It can turn into a chillum, a pipe, a miniature bong, maybe a part to a piece, a disc, anything. It is a blank or a can to be made into something great. The second version of a can I'm going to show you is my version that I like to do the most, and it's a little bit faster. What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up the tip of this tube just like I did in the first version. I'm going to heat this guy up, but instead of collecting the glass up into a nice thick tip, I'm going to rip away the glass and open up a hole. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up this tip, get it nice and hot, and I'm going to grab all the glass in the end there and rip her off, just like so. So I spin the tip of my rod, wrapping that all around the tip, drop it down in the flame, let her cut. Now the tip of that tube is nice and thin. I could actually puff into this tube from here and pop it open. But let's say that's jagged or something, or I don't want to puff into it, or maybe it's just too small or something. I can just poke at it. It's really thin. So now I can really just poke at the front, poke, poke, and it will pop right open. And now I've got an open section of tubing, just like we had in the first version. So now I've got an open section of tubing, and I'm going to ream out this blow tube. A nice little trick to ream out these blow tubes is if you have an L-marver, you can roll it on the corner of your L-marver, and that should open up your blow tube a little bit. So now I'm going to heat up the left side, which is my tube. I'm going to heat up this tube, angling a little bit to hit that edge, making sure that edge gets nice and hot. And now I'm going to heat up my blow tube. After it's all reamed out, I'm going to heat that guy up. I'm going to get them both nice and hot, and I'm going to connect them together real hot. And then I come out of the flame, I keep spinning, and keep her straight. Now as long as you get that connection good enough and you make sure that they're molten hot, you can get a real nice seal first try without even puffing into it. And as long as it's nice and straight, you've got a working can. So I basically just made that can just like I did in the first video, but much, much faster, skipping a bunch of steps, just by heating up, going slow, making sure I get the connection real good. And there we go. Now I've got that good connection, got a can, throw it in the kiln, and we're ready to turn it into something. The third version of making a can is called pulling a point. So you're going to pull a point, and that is basically using the tube that you make into a can to make a blow tube right off of your can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up this tube. This tube is real cold, so I'm going to flash this tube a little bit. You can either go real far out into the tail of your flame. You can go real far out into the tail of your flame that's not that powerful, or you can flash it in the flame up and down just like so. But I'm going to warm up this tube a little bit just because it's fresh, it's cold, it's room temperature. And now that it's a little bit warm, I'm going to kind of sit on top of my flame a little bit, let that get hot. And now I'm going to get a whole bunch of glass hot. I'm going to drop down in the flame, and I'm just going to gather up a bunch of glass using this major flame I've got going. Now that I got the glass really, really hot and it's condensing down, I'm going to pull it out of the flame, and we're going to give it a little pull. But we're going to go really slow. So the slower we pull, the thicker this is going to be width-wise, and the thicker the glass itself will retain. So I'm giving it a little pull, nice and slow, I'm still spinning. Little pull, nice and slow, still spinning. Little pull, nice and slow, still spinning. And there we go, it's going to cool down. We want to make sure that that's nice and straight. Keep spinning. And then I'm going to come down in the flame, detach it from one side. There we are. And then we heat up the tip of the pole we just did. We heat up the tip of the pole we just did. And then we're going to squish it down on a pad, make it flat, and bend it over just a little bit. Right there. And you'll see why we did that. You let that end cool down a little bit. And then we're going to give it a little smack, and it should pop right off. Now we polish that in the flame. And there we are. So now what I have left is I've got my section of tubing, and then I have this nice pulled point that will work as a blow tube. And then I just cut it right here, and I get myself a nice little can. Already ready to go. Has a blow tube already attached. So that's the third way of making a can, and I hope that helps, and I hope you enjoyed the video.